What is up, Nightcrawlers? Thank you so much for being here. Today, I bring you 4 potential cryptid encounters. They are terrifying, and they are also very real. That being said, I wanted to say thank you to each and every one of the authors for allowing me the opportunity to share their experience. If anyone has any information, please contact me or check the description for the stories. You can reach the author through there. Now, without any further ado, please sit back, relax, and let me tickle those inner fears. When I was 10, I was riding my bike home from a friend's house when I encountered a keloot. I live far north, and it was mid-December, so we were about halfway through a 3-month blackout. It was dark 24 hours a day. It was late afternoon, but if it weren't for the streetlights that lined every street, I wouldn't have been able to see a thing. I had to pedal slow because I was bundled up not only in my heavy clothes, but also my windproof coveralls, because we were pre-blizzard. I stopped halfway up the hill that led to my street to take a puff on my inhaler and rest my legs. After my breathing slowed, I was able to hear a panting sound behind me. I turned around expecting to see Petey, the coyote hybrid stray that was basically owned by the entire town. He was super friendly and was known to check on children when they were outside on their own, but Petey wasn't there. Thinking my hearing was still a little fuzzy due to an inner ear infection that I had just gotten over, I shrugged it off and dismounted my bike. It was easier to walk alongside it at this point. I felt a hot breath on the small bit of ankle that was exposed between my overalls and rolled down socks. Immediately, I stopped and looked around again. I was raised by a very superstitious family. My papa always says, if something seems to be a little off, then you're not perceptive enough. After a moment of surveying my surroundings, I saw a 4-legged form trotting up the street behind me. It was too tall to be Petey, but too thin to be a wolf or a loose hunting dog. So I began moving again, realizing that it was not an animal I could predict. I kept my eyes on it and walked slow just in case it was a very malnourished wolf that was looking for something to eat. It was only when I turned slowly onto my street that the animal started walking faster. Its movements were so strange and it made grunting noise that almost sounded human. When it suddenly began running, I pushed my bike towards it and dashed up the hill towards my house. Our street was essentially a dirt road that turned into our driveway. The dirt was muddy from melting snow and I kept slipping. Rocks cut my hands from stopping myself from hitting the ground and my tiny ankles kept rolling. At one point, I couldn't catch myself in time and I ended up sliding a few feet downhill. That's when I felt a searing pain on the back of my left leg. I cried out and rolled over to kick the animal off me. That was when I got a good look at my attacker. It was definitely a canine of some kind, but it didn't have any hair. Its skin looked like black metal under the flickering streetlight overhead. I didn't get a full look at it though. 2 good strikes to its side had it whimpering and jumping back just enough for me to scramble to my feet and begin running again. I could feel blood rolling down my leg as my home came into view. I could still hear the dog growling as it sprinted after me. I screamed for my moms as I approached the front porch, praying that they were home and that their guns were nearby. Aga opened the door less than a moment after hearing my shouts. She says that all she saw was me half running, half walking up the driveway, and that was all it took for her to run outside in her pajamas and bare feet. She heard sort of a howling noise as she picked me up and ran back up the steps. We got inside just as Katie was running out of the den with her 50-year-old AR-7. The rifle only worked like 40% of the time, but it was the only weapon that wasn't locked up in the bedroom closet. I wrapped my arms and legs around Aga and buried my face in her neck, sobbing violently. She could feel the warm blood from my leg against her back, and she immediately rushed into the kitchen to call Katie's mother Mary, Gramary as I called her, who was staying at my Aunt Gloria's house. She's a nurse and she would be better than any doctor or shaman in town. Gramary could hear my cries in the receiver and immediately got moving. Gloria, like everyone else in my family, lived on the same property, so it wouldn't take her long. Katie came in about 10 minutes after scanning the perimeter. She was soaked from the sleet that had started falling, and her hands were freezing when she ran in and started examining my face and neck. By then, Aga had gotten me to sit on the large ironwood dining room table, and they worked together to get the several layers of clothing removed from my stiff body. I was still in shock and couldn't assist them with the painstaking process. Gromeri and Gloria arrived just as they were getting me down to my long johns. Gloria had called my Uncle Cal and Pawpaw before they left her house. I can remember hearing this and feeling a relief unlike any other. In my mind, they were, and still are, the strongest men in the world. If something hurt me, they would make sure it would never come near me again. The four women had panicked when they saw the source of all the blood I had lost. There were 5 large gashes, about 5 inches long, with each one being about a half an inch wide. Luckily, Gromeri essentially had everything she needed to treat the wound, but she was adamant about getting me a tetanus or rabies vaccine, ASAP. Cal and Pawpaw gathered a posse, and the large group combed the woods and streets of the town. There was a lockdown due to the possibility of this being a rabid animal. Everyone stayed inside for nearly 24 hours until the men were able to confirm the coast was clear. Whatever attacked me was gone. When I was finally cleaned up with the drain put in my wounds, Cal sat down beside me on my parents' bed and asked me to recall everything that happened leading up to the attack. He asked if I had remembered smelling salt water, if I remembered seeing paw prints fading on the asphalt, if I remembered hearing chains rattling. Honestly, until he started asking me all of this, I didn't really entertain the idea that this was supernatural. I thought it was just a sickly wolf or coyote who wanted to claim one more victim before going into the woods to die. Pawpaw drew up some sketches for me and asked if any of them looked like what attacked me. When I pointed out the one that most resembled the hairless beast, he immediately kissed the side of my head and hugged me close. If anyone had read my previous post, they'd know how bizarre this was. Pawpaw is a very stoic Inuit man who never physically showed affection. My moms tell me that when I was a baby, he only held me a handful of times, and it was always stiff. He loved me, they assured me, but he would never tell me as such. So when he pulled away from the embrace and stroked my hair with tears in his eyes, I became afraid. I remember asking him if I needed to go to the hospital, and his small chuckle in response. Without a word, he left, leaving Aga to assure me that I wouldn't be crossing the pearly gates anytime soon. In the 1950s, Pawpaw had a friend that went by the name of Howdy. He was also an Inuit, and the two of them had basically grown up together. When they were both 15, Pawpaw had joined Howdy on a hunting trip about 100 miles north of our property. This took place during the blackout as well. As they trekked through the thick brush of the tundra, Pawpaw could remember seeing Howdy about 5 feet ahead of him. But suddenly, he wasn't there. There was a howl, a scream, and a growl before the overgrowth to Pawpaw's right began to rustle violently. Before he could react, it went silent. He found Howdy's body about 10 yards away from the path. He was mauled and mangled to the point of being unrecognizable, but Pawpaw knew it was his buddy. It took him 2 days to carry Howdy back to his truck so he could drive him home. Throughout this arduous hike, Pawpaw could see large paw prints in the mud ahead of him. Each time he drew closer, they would disappear. When he was finally to the truck and setting Howdy up in the bed of it, he saw what he knew was responsible for ending the other man's life. A Quileute, something he had only read about, was pacing around the edge of the trail, watching Pawpaw with small but piercing eyes. Not unlike the legend of the black dogs, Quileute are large, and in this case hairless, canines that were known to attack travelers and kill them. From the legends told in our village, it was rare to survive a Quileute encounter, but those who did immediately went mad. As far as I know, I never went mad. Surprisingly, my wound healed in practically no time, and the only thing I had left of the encounter were horrific nightmares and a fear of the blackout. Aga maintains that despite a disturbing life on our property, the most traumatizing thing she ever experienced was watching me scramble helplessly up our muddy driveway. She says that the screams that tore through my throat were what she imagined a damned spirit would sound like. When I was a teenager, me and 2 friends were helping my mom bring in the groceries. It was dusk in late summer and the sky was getting dark. Out of thin air, a massive black dog appeared. It was the size of a very, very large wolf, but it was not a wolf. It was clearly a black dog of some sort. It looked very much like the Grim from Harry Potter, is the closest thing I can describe it. We all froze and stared at it. It happened super fast. It was just standing there in between us and the car looking at us. What made it a supernatural event was the dog was a holograph, or at least it appeared that way. The outline of its body seemed to glow and shift, almost like a computer glitch. Its eyes also seemed to glow with the yellow light within. Then it ran straight into the side of the house and disappeared into thin air. Me and my friends all looked at each other like, "Did you see that?" Obviously, the black dog is an omen and is popular in European folklore. I'm in the US. But does anyone have any other insight on this great black dog? Anyone else seen it or know what it means for it to appear? I grew up in a very small Kansas town on the Nebraska border, a relatively quiet place. I usually went on a walk with my small dog around dusk or dark. Besides the rabbit or occasional skunk, we never really saw anything in town. It was starting to get dark when me and my dog walked up to the yard. There was a row of bushes where we had a family cat buried when he passed. I just glanced up to that spot when I saw something hunched over its grave. It looked like it was looking for something. It was on 4 paws and had skin that seemed to be a sickly grayish tint with patches of scraggly fur. The face looked vaguely dog-like. It looked really lean. I was frozen in place because I wasn't sure what I was seeing and how it would react when it saw me. But when it saw me, it looked me dead in the eye and ran off on 2 feet. I thought I was hallucinating or crazy, but my dog reacted to the same thing. She didn't bark, but she was terrified and stayed really close to my side. We rushed inside and I never saw that thing again. Happened over 10 years ago, but I still wonder what I saw. I know I don't live in a Navajo area, so I have my doubts that it was a skinwalker. I'm just not sure what I saw. First off, this is what happened last night that really freaked me out. I have a back door in my room that leads outside to my backyard. The whole reason I was even wondering about Wendigos is because I live in Native American territory, Blackfoot to be exact. My house is also kind of located more rurally. I'm very, very close to the woods and mountain range. Anyway, last night around 1 a.m., I had opened my back door for some fresh air since it was a bit stuffy in my room. I stepped out for a second to smoke a cig real quick, and then probably about 50 feet away, I heard something that I can only describe as sounding like an Aztec death whistle, followed by 2 thumps on the ground. Yeah, that freaked me out, so I ran back inside real quick. LOL. My cat, who was laying on my bed, looked absolutely terrified as well. Her eyes were large and she was just staring outside. I turned on the lights and went to look and there was nothing there. Note, there's no houses behind me. It's just the woods and mountains. Not the first time something like this has happened either. From when I moved here, I've heard tapping a lot at my windows and doors. Even once sounded like someone completely body slammed my back door in the middle of the night. In addition to that, I'll occasionally hear whistling, but pretty faint whistling, at night. I always get kind of bad feelings over my backyard at night. I get oddly paranoid for seemingly no reason. Seems like this sort of thing is getting more common for me too. I'll hear this sort of thing a lot more often, and my dog literally refuses to go outside at night to go to the bathroom. What does this sound like? I'm not really an expert, but I've learned more about Wendigos, and it sounds a bit interesting. Thank you all again for watching. I do appreciate it. Again, if you have any information that can be passed along to the authors, please contact myself or follow the links in the description to their Reddit page. You can contact them there. But until next time, remember, just because you couldn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't watching you.